My brother texted me, "Sold your worthless building for $200K, family needs it more." He didn't know it was worth $8.5 million, and he didn't know detectives were already at his office. The text came through at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, while a city planner was explaining proposed zoning changes to a room full of consultants and property owners who had no idea I was one of them. My phone was face down beside a folder of maps and printed assessments. During a lull in the presentation, it lit up. Marcus. I glanced down. "Sold your worthless building for $200,000. Family needs the money more than you." No question mark. No request. No hint that he understood what he had just done. Just a statement of fact, delivered with the casual confidence of someone who has never once had to consider that the people around him might have lives they haven't disclosed. I read it twice, then a third time. The building Marcus was talking about, the one he'd called worthless, sat on the corner of Morrison and 8th in a part of the city that developers had been circling for 2 years. 6 stories of brick, steel, and original glass. 3 businesses on the ground floor. A coffee shop with lines out the door every morning, a boutique design studio, and a family-owned restaurant that had quietly become the neighborhood's anchor. Floors 2 through 4 were premium office space, nearly fully leased. The top 2 floors were luxury apartments with skyline views and a waiting list. The building generated $142,000 in rental income every month. According to the last formal assessment, it was worth $8.5 million. Marcus had sold it for $200,000 and texted me to say I was welcome. I set my phone face down again, looked at the zoning map on the screen at the front of the room, and sat very still for the remainder of the presentation. My name is Emma Chin. I'm 29 years old, and for most of my life my family has understood me as the quiet one, the one without a plan, the one who didn't go to law school like Marcus, didn't marry a tech executive like my sister Victoria, didn't collect the visible markers that our family used to measure a life worth respecting. I drove a paid-off Toyota Camry with 94,000 miles on it. I dressed in clothes that didn't announce themselves. I showed up to Tuesday family dinners with a bottle of wine and said very little. My mother called me sensible with the particular warmth people reserve for someone they've quietly given up on. What they didn't know, what I had never found a reason to tell them, was that I owned 17 properties across the city. I had started working as a property manager at 22, right out of college, for a firm that handled mid-level commercial and residential assets. Most people in that job use it as a stepping stone. I used it as a classroom. I watched how buildings were acquired, how leases were structured, how neighborhoods moved before anyone with real money noticed them moving. I learned what a building looked like 3 years before it became valuable. And more importantly, I learned how to be patient enough to wait. At 23, I made my first purchase, a single-family rental in a neighborhood everyone else described as sketchy. I paid $112,000 cash, every dollar I had saved in 2 years of living on almost nothing, and had it rented within 6 weeks. 8 months later, I used the equity to move into my second property, then a third. I quit the firm at 25 and started managing my own portfolio full-time, which my family interpreted as me losing my job and being too proud to say so. The Morrison building I bought in April of 2019 for $2.3 million. Cash sale, no mortgage. The neighborhood was starting to move and I had been watching it for 3 years. Within 18 months, the ground floor was fully leased and the office space was filling. Within 2 years, I had a waiting list for the apartments. My family thought I was renting a modest 2-bedroom across town. I lived in a 2,400 square foot penthouse on the top floor of a building I owned outright. I had let them believe what they wanted because in my family, the version of success they recognized required announcements. It required a degree ceremony, a wedding, a promotion with a title attached. My success didn't have any of those things. It had spreadsheets and lease agreements and a property management software login I checked every morning before coffee. There was no dinner toast for buying your first building. No holiday card announcement for achieving financial independence at 27. So I stayed quiet, and my family filled the silence with their own assumptions. Marcus was the impressive one. 34, law degree from a top 15 university, a firm of his own that my father had seeded with $400,000, and my family discussed at every gathering with the reverence people usually reserve for religious figures. The firm had glossy signage, mahogany furniture, a downtown office that cost more per month than most people's annual salaries. It had 2 clients. I knew this because one of the buildings Marcus leased his office from was mine. I had never mentioned it. I had simply watched for 18 months as the firm ran through my father's investment and began quietly accumulating debt to vendors, contractors, and software providers. The invisible infrastructure Marcus had never bothered to budget for because he was too busy buying furniture that looked expensive. By the time he sent me that text, Marcus's firm was $340,000 in debt and his operating account held $47,000. He needed capital. He needed it in a way that was becoming urgent. And he had looked at what he believed was my small, unimportant life and seen an asset he could liquidate without consequence. He had been wrong about almost everything, but he had been most wrong about the consequence part. The meeting ended at 4:15. As people gathered their binders and filed out, I read 3 more texts from Marcus. Already deposited the check. Don't be mad. You know the family business needs capital. Then, you should thank me for getting $200K for that dump. I walked to my car, sat in the driver's seat for 30 seconds, then called Tom Reyes. Tom had been my attorney for 4 years. He was 41, a real estate and property litigation specialist specialist who had handled every major transaction in my portfolio and who answered his phone with the alertness of someone who has learned that calls from me are rarely simple. "Emma," he said, "what's wrong?" Not a question. He already knew from my voice. "My brother sold the Morrison building without my consent. He claims he got $200,000 for it." Silence. Then the sound of Tom setting something down carefully. "The $8.5 million property. Yes, your brother sold it. He says he did. How did he execute the transfer? What authority did he claim?" "I don't know yet. That's what I need you to find out." Papers rustled. I heard Tom exhale the way he does when he's already running through the legal framework in his head. "Emma, depending on how he did this, we're looking at fraudulent misrepresentation, forgery of authorization documents, and conversion of property. Given the value involved, this is not a civil matter. This is criminal." "I know. Are you sure you want to?" "I want you to contact the buyer, contact the title company, file whatever is needed to freeze the transfer or reverse it. If false authority was used, report it through the proper channels, even though it's Marcus, especially because it's Marcus." I hung up and drove to my parents' house. It was Tuesday, which meant family dinner. Every Tuesday at 6:30, my mother expected us around the dining room table. Pot roast, buttered carrots, the particular performance of family normalcy that required everyone to pretend the undercurrents weren't there. Marcus's BMW was in the driveway, parked at the angle he always used that took up space for two cars. Victoria's husband Trevor's white Tesla sat beside it, impossibly clean. Inside, the house smelled like roasting meat and old habits. Mom was in the kitchen wearing the apron that said Queen of the Kitchen in curling blue letters. Dad was in his recliner, watching financial news with the volume too high, which had always struck me as ironic. "Emma," Mom called. "You're here." "I'm here." Her smile had that expectant quality she got when she thought she already knew how a conversation was going to go. "Marcus just told us the most wonderful news." She bustled toward me, wiping her hands on her apron. "About selling that old building of yours. $200,000, can you imagine? For that old thing? Marcus said you'd been trying to get rid of it for years. Isn't it wonderful that he finally found someone?" I set my purse on the entry table. I hadn't been trying to sell it. Mom blinked. I'd never mentioned selling it. The building wasn't listed. Her smile wavered, recalibrating. "Where's Marcus?" "Dining room with your father and Victoria. They're celebrating." Of course they were. Marcus was at the head of the table, Dad's seat, the one reserved for holidays and moments the family wanted to mark as significant. He had a glass of Dad's good scotch in his hand, the bottle that only came out for promotions and genuine accomplishments, and he was wearing the particular expression of a man who has just done something he expects to be thanked for. Victoria and Trevor were across from each other, glasses in hand. The candles were lit. The table was set for a celebration that hadn't waited for the guest of honor to agree there was something to celebrate. "Emma," Marcus said, standing with a grin wide enough to fill the room. "There she is." I looked at him. "I was just telling everyone about the sale." He waved his glass. "You don't have to thank me. That's what family does." Victoria leaned forward. "It's really generous. Emma, that building has been sitting there for years doing nothing, has it? I mean, you were managing it for whoever owned it, but..." "Right," I said quietly. Trevor shifted in his chair. He'd always been the uncomfortable one at these dinners, the one who sensed the water temperature even when he couldn't explain why. "Actually," he started, "I thought Emma mentioned once that the important thing," Marcus cut in, "is that I got her a great deal. Johnson Properties wanted $150,000. I negotiated them up to $200,000. He lifted his glass. "You're welcome." Dad came in from the living room. "That's my Marcus," he said, always looking out for his little sister. Natural negotiator. "Marcus already deposited the check," Mom said happily, and then paused when she registered no one else was smiling. "Into the firm's account. He says Emma knows the firm needed capital, and once they're profitable..." "You deposited my check?" I said. "Into the firm," Marcus said. "Emma, it's an investment. 6 months. The firm will be booming and you'll get it back doubled." I looked at my brother, really looked at him, at the ease in his posture, the complete absence of doubt. He had done this thing and walked into our parents' house and poured himself a glass of scotch and sat in our father's chair. He was 34 years old, and he had never once, in his entire life, experienced a consequence that his family hadn't softened before it landed. "Marcus," I said, "how did you execute the sale?" "Johnson Properties. I told you. The paperwork, the deed transfer, the authority you claimed." His expression tightened slightly, the first hairline crack in the performance. "I'm a lawyer, Emma. I know how real estate transactions work." "So you signed my name?" The room went still. "I didn't sign your name." "Then what authority did you claim?" "Dad's power of attorney. He gave it to me years ago for family properties." I turned to my father. "Did you?" Dad looked uncomfortable for the first time all evening. "For my properties, yes, but the Morrison building is mine," I said. The silence that followed was a different kind than before, sharper, more load-bearing. "My name on the deed, my property taxes, my tenants, my leases, my insurance, my building." Marcus laughed, but something had gone out of it. "Emma, come on. You manage buildings. You don't own them. There's a difference." I purchased the Morrison building in April of 2019 for $2.3 million cash sale. No mortgage. "Would you like to see the deed?" Victoria gasped. $2 million? Where would you even? You were making $45,000 a year. "I was making $45,000 working for someone else," I said. "Then I started working for myself." Mom sat down. "I own 17 properties in this city," I said. "The Morrison building is currently valued at $8.5 million. It generates $142,000 in monthly rental income. income. I haven't had a traditional job in 4 years because I haven't needed one. Nobody moved. Marcus laughed again, the sound hollow now. That's not possible. If you owned millions in property, we'd know, would you? You drive a Toyota, a paid-off Toyota that gets good gas mileage. You live in a tiny apartment, a 2,400 square foot penthouse. No mortgage. I own the building. Dad set down his glass. Emma, if this is some kind of... My phone rang. Tom. Excuse me, I said, and stepped into the kitchen. Emma. Tom's voice had shifted into the register he uses when the news is serious, and he wants to make sure I'm processing it correctly. We have a problem. For your brother. What did you find? The sale went through a title company called Quick Close Solutions. They specialize in fast closings and, from what I'm seeing, transactions that don't receive the scrutiny they should. Marcus presented what appeared to be a power of attorney document and a deed copy. Both look convincing until you check them against the actual records. And they don't match. Not even close. The title company is cooperating fully. They're frightened, and they should be. Johnson Properties is legitimate. They thought they were buying from an authorized representative. Their legal team is already mobilizing. They'll pursue claims against the title company, against Marcus, and against anyone else who handled the transaction. The $200,000 deposited this morning into Marcus's firm account. I've contacted the bank. The account can be frozen pending investigation. Emma, his operating balance before that deposit was $47,000. He was under serious financial pressure. He was desperate. That would be my read. Yes. What happens next? I've already filed the preservation documents. Given the amount involved and the fraudulent authority used, the district attorney's office will likely review it within 24 hours. There's also the matter of the state bar. What Marcus did, executing a real estate transaction using false authority, that's not just criminal. That's an ethics violation that could end his license. I looked through the kitchen doorway. Everyone in the dining room was pretending not to watch me. One more thing, Tom said. The Morrison building. What do you want done about the transfer itself? Void it? Contact Johnson Properties directly. I'll honor a proper sale at fair market value if they're still interested, but this transfer doesn't stand. Understood. I'll make the call tonight. I walked back to the dining room and sat down. That was my attorney, I said. He's filed the necessary reports. The title company is cooperating. Johnson Properties is preparing legal action. The district attorney's office will likely review charges by tomorrow morning. Marcus stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. You're bluffing. No. The title company accepted those documents. They also provided copies of them the moment my attorney called. His face changed. That was the moment. Not when I'd said the numbers. Not when I'd mentioned the deed. That was the moment Marcus understood the ground had actually shifted. The documents you used, I said. The false power of attorney. The deed copy. My attorney has everything. Victoria looked from Marcus to me, from me to Marcus. Emma, he's your brother. He is my brother. He also used forged authority to sell my property and deposited the proceeds into his own account. Dad's face had gone red. We handle things as a family. We do not drag private matters into... He sold an $8.5 million property that didn't belong to him, Dad. He was trying to help the family business. It's not his business to help himself to my assets. Mom was crying. Emma, please. Think about Marcus's career. Think about what you're doing to him. I'm not doing anything to him. He did this. Marcus's phone rang. It buzzed against the dining room table. Unknown number, local area code, and the sound of it in that silent room was like a stone dropping into water. Answer it, I said. He picked it up with hands that weren't quite steady. Hello? I watched his face. I've known Marcus my whole life, and I know every version of his expressions. The charm, the deflection, the wounded dignity he performs when he's been caught at something. What crossed his face now was none of those things. It was understanding. The specific physical understanding of someone realizing the scale of what they've done. Yes, he said. This is Marcus Chin. A pause. Who is this? The voice on the other end was loud enough that the shape of its anger carried across the table, even if the words didn't. Marcus went white. No, I was told. She's my sister, I thought. I had authority. His throat moved. What do you mean, consent? Louder now. Sharp. Marcus looked at me with eyes that had finally done the math. The city's most, but it's just an old building. I thought. A pause. 8.5 million? He sat down. But I only got 200,000. His voice cracked on the last word. He lowered the phone slowly. The way you lower something you no longer have the strength to hold. That was Johnson Properties' attorney, he said. Nobody spoke. They're pursuing misrepresentation charges. They want the $200,000 back immediately, plus damages. He looked at me. They say the building is worth $8.5 million. I said, yes. Victoria's phone buzzed. She looked at it and her face changed completely. Marcus, her voice had gone flat. This is already online. She held up the screen and kept scrolling, and with each swipe, her expression got more still. Johnson Properties put out a statement. Real Estate Weekly picked it up. Legal Times. They're calling it one of the biggest property misrepresentation cases in the city this year. Trevor leaned over to read. He didn't say anything. Dad stood up. This is fixable. We hire a better... With what money? I said. He turned. Marcus's firm is underwater even with the $200,000. Dad, you refinanced this house to give him startup capital. Victoria, you and Trevor co-signed his office lease. Victoria went pale. How do you know that? Because the building Marcus leases his office from is mine. I make it my business to know what happens in my buildings. The room absorbed that. We are not your investments, Marcus said. His voice had lost everything. The ease, the authority, the warmth he used to fill rooms with. What was left sounded raw. We're your family. Then why did you take from me? I was helping. The firm has 2 clients, Marcus. Marcus. Your monthly expenses are around $47,000. Your monthly revenue is nowhere near that. You were going under and you thought I was small enough to be useful. Mom was sobbing openly now. Dad was arguing, with the air, with the situation, with the specific unreasonableness of consequences arriving at his dining room table during pot roast. My phone rang again. Tom, I answered at the table. Officers are en route to Marcus's address, Tom said. If he's confirmed at your parents' house, they may come there instead. I wanted to give you a heads up. He paused. Also, the state bar has been notified. They're opening an ethics investigation. His license will likely be suspended pending review. Even if the criminal process takes time, he won't be practicing law by the end of the week. I looked at Marcus across the table. He had heard enough. His whole body seemed to collapse inward, like a building whose load-bearing walls had just been identified as hollow. Emma, he said. Quiet. The voice of someone who has run entirely out of road. Please. I ended the call. I'll fix it, he said. I'll sell my car. Whatever it takes. Just make this stop. You can't fix this, Marcus. You don't have $8.5 million. You don't even have the $200,000 anymore. The bank is freezing the account. Victoria stood. You're destroying him over money. It's not about the money. Then what? It's about the fact that all of you assumed I had nothing worth protecting. I looked around the table. At my father, who had toasted Marcus's achievements at every gathering while I sat quietly with my wine. At my mother, who had called my work a little job with the gentle pity of someone patting a child on the head. At Victoria, who had pitied me for my modest life. At Marcus, who had thought so little of me that he sold my property and deposited the money and texted me to say thank you. You decided I was small. You decided I could be used. And you never once thought to ask whether you had the full picture. The doorbell rang. Everyone froze. Dad went to answer it. I heard his voice in the hallway, trying to sound authoritative, trying to make the presence of two officers at his front door into a misunderstanding he could manage. He couldn't manage it. They came into the dining room doorway. Marcus Chin? Marcus stood. He moved like someone much older than 34. Yes, we need you to come with us regarding a property transaction complaint. Mom cried out. Victoria covered her mouth. Dad began arguing immediately. Misunderstanding, family matter, can be handled privately. The same words he'd been using to smooth over Marcus's mistakes since Marcus was 17. They didn't work any better now than they deserved to. As they walked Marcus toward the door, he looked back at me. I'm your brother, he said. I know, I said. That's what makes this so disappointing. After they left, the house fell apart in the specific way houses fall apart when the person who held the mythology together has just been walked out the front door, mom in a chair, crying, dad on the phone, cycling through his contacts for a defense attorney. Victoria, alternating between tears and accusations, she threw in my direction like she wasn't sure they'd stick. Trevor found me in the kitchen. He was quieter than I expected. He had always been the one at these dinners who seemed to sense the undercurrent without quite being able to name it. Emma, he said, I need to ask you something. Go ahead. Victoria and I co-signed Marcus's office lease. If the firm collapses, you're liable for the rent, $8,000 a month for 3 years. He ran a hand through his hair. We can't cover that, not with everything else. He looked at me carefully. The calculation in it wasn't unkind. It was just honest. You really own 17 properties. Yes, and you've been listening to all of us talk about money and success for years without saying a word. Would you have believed me? He was quiet for a moment. Then, probably not. The honesty surprised me. In 4 years of family dinners, it was the most direct thing he had ever said. The building Marcus leased his office from, I said. Who do you think owns it? Trevor stared at me. I can terminate the lease for cause if the firm collapses under these circumstances, I said. You and Victoria won't be liable. Why would you do that, after everything? Because you didn't take from me. He looked at me for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression that I hadn't seen there before. You're not what I thought you were, he said. No one ever expects the quiet one to have power. Marcus made bail the night he was arrested. My father refinanced the house, again, to cover it. Tom called me the next morning with the full picture. The state bar suspended Marcus's license within 48 hours of the notification. Both of his clients had retained other counsel by the end of the week. Legal Times ran a follow-up piece. 16 creditors filed claims against the firm, IT vendors, janitorial services, printing companies, software providers, the entire invisible infrastructure Marcus had never paid for because he'd been too busy buying furniture that looked impressive. The firm was dead before the criminal process even properly began. 3 weeks after the arrest, Marcus accepted a plea agreement, 5 years probation, full restitution to Johnson Properties, and permanent disbarment. The alternative was trial, and the evidence was the kind that doesn't leave room for interpretation. He took the deal. The restitution amount was a number so large that the monthly payment schedule was more symbolic than practical. He didn't have it. My parents didn't have it. Victoria and Trevor didn't have it. The night before the restitution hearing, my father called me. I let it ring twice before answering. Emma, he said, I'm begging you, pay the restitution. You have the money. Make this stop. No, he's your brother, your family. He sold my building, Dad, because he thought I was nobody. We never thought that. Every Tuesday dinner for 10 years you did. Every holiday. Every gathering where Marcus was the successful lawyer and I was poor Emma with her little job. I was right there. You all said it with your eyes every time. He didn't answer. I built this myself, I said. Every building, every investment, every dollar. I did it alone because none of you believed I could. And the moment Marcus thought he could profit from it, he took it without asking because in his mind, I was too small to matter. I paused. If I pay the restitution, that lesson disappears. I hung up. At the hearing, the judge ordered restitution paid over time. The number followed Marcus out of the courtroom and into whatever life came next. Smaller, quieter, emptied of the costume he'd worn for 34 years. 6 months after the conviction, Marcus got a job at a property management company. Entry level. $42,000 a year, managing buildings for someone else. My mother called when she found out. Is this what you wanted? Your brother working a job he's overqualified for? I worked that exact job for years, I said. You all thought it was too small to mention. That was different. How? She couldn't answer. A year after the conviction, Victoria invited me to lunch. We met at a cafe 2 blocks from a building I owned. She arrived without her usual performance. No big sunglasses, no carefully curated smile. Just my sister, tired, sitting across from me with both hands around a coffee cup. We talked about her kids, her marriage, her life, not my portfolio, not what I owned, just me. It was the best conversation we had ever had. 2 years after the conviction, I was having breakfast in my penthouse when an unknown number came through. I almost didn't answer. Emma, it's Marcus. I held the phone and said nothing. I'm leading a training session next week, he said, for new property managers, investment fundamentals, how to read a neighborhood before it moves, how to think about a building's potential instead of its current condition. A pause. And I realized I learned all of it from you, from me. When we were kids, you used to talk about buildings and streets and property values. You noticed which stores opened, which blocks were getting repaired, which houses were being renovated. I thought you were boring. His voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. Turns out you were the only one paying attention. I was too arrogant to see it. I looked out at the city. At the skyline, I had learned, building by building, over a decade of work that no one had applauded. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Marcus said. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I see it now, what you built. I'm sorry I had to lose everything to understand what you'd been doing all along. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there for a long time. My family had thought I was poor because I didn't display my wealth, insignificant because I didn't demand attention, safe to take from because I seemed too quiet to fight back. They had been wrong about all of it. I looked out at the city, at 4 buildings I could see from where I sat, and 13 more I couldn't. And I thought about the text message that had come through at 2:47 on a Tuesday afternoon. Sold your worthless building. You should thank me. The building was worth $8.5 million. The lesson was worth more than that. Some things don't need to be said out loud to be understood. The city knew, the skyline knew, and now finally, so did they.